last year. And that that messaging was provided on the marquee in front of the Riverfront Stadium, Waterfront Stadium. So it was messaging that reached a lot of people. And that messaging talked about the 200 species of birds, the 15 million people that get their drinking water from the Delaware River. It talked about the native plants and how important those are to the work that we do and to the environment that we live in. And so all of these things led to, and you're seeing some of the slides coming up now. This led to the Delaware River being named American River of the Year last year in 2020 by American Rivers. So it's a very important place to us, and it's a very important place to, I think, everyone who lives anywhere in this area, and certainly to artists who are inspired by the beauty of the Delaware River Valley. So with that, I would like to introduce Tess Fields, president of the Garden State Watercolor Society, who will tell you about some of the inspiration behind this exhibit. And as I do so, I just want to make sure I encourage all of you to go online and sign up for a timed entry. Will be very safe. You'll enter the Johnson Education Center wearing a mask. There's hand sanitizer at the front door, and we are letting in only a limited number of people in time slots to make sure we keep you safe as you get a chance to view this beautiful exhibit. So with that, I'll move this on to Tess Fields, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Linda. We do love working with you and your staff. It's a wonderful place, and you know, your mission is close to our hearts for sure. But I want to welcome everyone to the Zoom cocktail hour. The purpose is to kick off Garden State Watercolor Society's 51st annual juried exhibit and our 3rd annual art installation. I want to remind you to please keep yourself muted and have your cameras off, not the speakers, but everybody else, since that can have an effect, a negative effect on the quality of our Zoom presentation. And then you can enter some questions or comments via the chat, and we can take a look at those when they come up. I want to mention that the weather forecast is for thunderstorms throughout our area. Right in this time slot. So there is a possibility if one or more of our presenters lose power or lose internet, that we'll carry on as long as we can, but just beware that could be happening. So yes, we're really very excited for this exhibit. It is the first exhibit that we've been able to hang in 2 years, and the exhibit itself, as Linda said, is exceptional. What the artists came up with and what our lovely juror chose to participate in the show is really exceptional. And I want to first thank our extremely hardworking team. There is a tough team of that we can always count on, and it's Judy and Jackie Hummer, Joanne Amantia, Joan Capaldo, Peter Zdenek, Sue Beam, Margaret Simpson. Our juror was Tim Saturnow, and I also want to thank Linda Mead and her great staff for helping us out at whenever we need it. As Linda said, you got to come in person. It's great to view these online, but you got to come on in person because the art is even more impressive in person. And as Linda said, there's
I can't hear everybody.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I hope. Yes. Okay.
I
The nodding of heads. That's good. Let's see. We have, it's a very easy to use timed entry system, and it's at GSWS.org.
I got it blocked there, but there's no.
Somebody else is speaking, maybe. That should be muted. So the galleries are open 3 days a week from 10 to 2 until October 18th. So there should be some time for everybody to make it there in person. We are planning an award ceremony and reception.
No, she
for
just muted me, but there's no picture.
Oh, who is this? Please put yourself on mute. Yes, somebody, whoever's talking. Can you tell, Judy? Okay. Okay, the award ceremony, we're hoping to hold it outside on the patio at D&R on September 10th. And at that time, people will be also let into the gallery to see the show in time slots. And you can view both the juried exhibit and the art installation virtually online. You can go to the Garden State Watercolor website, and I recommend you see both of them. And when you do, make sure your sound is on so that you can enjoy the full experience of those virtual shows. So I have a couple of slides about the art installation now. One more. There we go. Joan Capaldo leads the charge on this. This is our third annual art installation. They have been occurring along with our juried exhibit. And on the and we have the similar theme for this one as we did the juried exhibit. So let's go to the next slide. And I think the rules of nope, there's our team putting it up in the lobby of D&R Greenway. I think it was harder than they thought it would be, but it came out beautifully, yes. And this year it's like 4D, you know, because it has sound and light and all that, and it's absolutely beautiful. My contribution was a bucket of rocks. I went down to the river and I put a bunch of muddy, slimy rocks into a bucket and dropped it off. That was my contribution, and a couple paintings. So let's see, the next slide, please. Okay, so the rules for every art installation are a little bit different. This year we had 44 artists and 100 paintings, and the theme challenge was to paint landscapes and wildlife that rely on the river in cool colors only, in blues and greens and purples. And you would think that may not be as interesting or something, or it's hard to not paint with all the colors you have available, but we have some wonderful paintings because of it. Next slide, please. For example, I don't think you've ever seen a purple frog, but it really, it's beautiful. Actually, this painting is sold. All the installation paintings are 5 by 7 inches, and they're unframed, and they can be purchased from D&R Greenway. They'll, of course, stay hanging until the end of the show. How about the next slide? Okay, we have all kinds of, and let's see, oh gosh, now it looks like I had that frog, and now it's being eaten by a bird on the painting on the right. So that's, I didn't even realize what that was at first, but yes, anyway. So there's all kinds of wildlife paintings, and there's all kinds of lovely landscapes. And there's this next one, Judy changed the slide, that even included some of the more industrial areas, but it's absolutely stunning, stunning little landscape. And it shows different uses of the river that we're going to hear all about in a minute. So let me see, go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to just say that after we hear from Leslie, our next speaker, you'll meet 4 of our very special Garden State watercolor artists and see their unique takes on the Delaware River. Linda mentioned we've all mentioned the theme is the river for both of the exhibits. In putting this happy hour together, I wanted it to reflect my take on the theme. And I personally have a deep love for the river, and because I grew up on it. My friends and I boated and swam in it all summer long. And even now I try to get in it at least once a summer. And because growing up along the river was a wonderful place to grow up. And we enjoyed it very much. So, but enjoying the river and understanding it for me really goes hand in hand. And today we're going to learn a little bit about the science of water quality and the water quality improvement specific to the Delaware River from my longtime friend and colleague, Leslie McGeorge. Leslie and I work together at New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's Science and Research Program. Together, we did a lot of water and wastewater sampling and research concerning toxic substances. New Jersey was really a leader at the time, and we did a lot of good work, and we made a lot of good friends. And I want to thank Leslie so much for taking your retirement fun time to participate in this happy hour and for your decades of friendship. So Leslie, it's up on you now. You're up.
Thank you very much, Tess, or Tessie, as I will always know you. I'm also very grateful for our long-term friendship and the work that we did together. I'm really excited to be with everyone this evening at this event, an intersection between natural resource art and science. Personally, I could not paint a thing other than perhaps finger paint with my grandson, who's 1. But luckily I have friends that can paint and that decorate my house and decorate my jewelry. This is a piece of art from Tess. So they keep me well stocked with artwork. My thanks to Tessie for this invitation and also to D&R. The work that D&R does in conserving land is absolutely vital for water protections. So thank you so much, Linda, and all of your colleagues for what you do. It is a critical effort. As Tessie said, I recently retired from DEP after about 40 years. I worked in the science and research programs for about half and then over to the water programs. I do see, I looked quickly at the participant list earlier on, and I see a few of my colleagues, notable ones from DEP, are joining us today in the water programs, a lot of them. Deb Hammond, Bette Sauvigny, Elena Baldwin-Brown, maybe some others. So thanks for being with us. And while DEP monitors for the New Jersey waters within the state boundaries, including tributaries to the Delaware, we do not monitor and assess and set the standards for the main stem and Delaware Bay. That's done by the Delaware River Basin Commission. So if you could go back to the previous slide, I think I would appreciate it. I want to thank folks from the DRBC. The other way, please. There you go. I want to thank folks from the DRBC, John Yagacek, Elaine Panuccio, Kate Schmidt, and Stacy Mulholland for providing some information for this presentation and also for all the work they do on the Delaware. Next slide, please. So overview of what I will talk about is the Delaware River Basin, some basic facts about it, some history of the river and some of the uses, the recovery successes, some of the notable ones, challenges, what each of us can do, and where we can get additional information. Next slide, please. Water fun facts. About 71% of the earth is covered with water, but only 3% of that is fresh water, and less than 1%, 0.5%, is available for drinking water. As has already been mentioned, the Delaware Basin provides a significant amount of drinking water to New Jersey residents and to New York City residents and others. The Delaware Basin includes both fresh and estuarine waters, saltier waters, and the Delaware Bay is part of Delaware Basin. Next, please. This is what the basin looks like. And we often talk about watersheds and basins. What is a watershed and what is a basin? So a watershed is an area of land that drains or sheds water into a specific water body, such as a creek, a lake, a river. And a basin is just an accumulation of a large watershed made up of smaller watersheds, like the concept of nesting dolls fitting into a larger doll. So there's different colors in the map provided by DRBC are watersheds, and within them are smaller ones, and together they make up the full basin. Next slide, please. The river is over 300 miles long, the basin, and it is an interstate boundary its entire length. About half of the area within the basin, the watershed, is in Pennsylvania, about a quarter in New Jersey, and the rest is made up of New York State and Delaware. It is the longest undammed river in our country, east of the Mississippi. Some of the tributaries have dams, but a number of them are being taken down. It is tidal all the way up to about the middle of New Jersey there, where Trenton is, about 133 miles. And again, a large number, 13 million people, rely on its waters. Next slide. So what does DRBC do? One thing I wanted to point out is it was formed in 1961, and the state members are the same states that you have membership in the Watercolor Society: Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. I understand from Tessie that New Jersey has, of course, the most members, but the others are represented. The responsibilities of the commission include some areas that I'll touch on today: water supply, particularly water quality. They establish what the standards are. They test the water, monitor it, and assess it for the quality. And they are involved in determining how much pollution can come from different sources, and responsible for saying how much is too much. And that's called load reductions. So one thing about monitoring, you can't have success stories about rivers. You can't have any knowledge about problems in water quality unless you're monitoring, unless you're testing. And you can't do anything with trends unless you have long-term monitoring results. And that's what DRBC has, and that's what New Jersey has in a lot of its waters. And the last area I might touch on a little is recreation. Next slide, please. So historical issues in the Delaware Basin. In the early to mid 1900s and before, even in colonial times, there was severe pollution in the tidal Delaware River, particularly around Philadelphia, Camden area, and some of its major tribs. That pollution, look at the cartoon on the right from the Philadelphia Record in 1937, that pollution was a lot from raw sewage. The fellow is preferring to have his martini instead of a glass of water from the Schuylkill in that cartoon. And there were other pollution sources: sewage, industrial wastewater treatment plants, like Tess mentioned, that we have monitored a lot together. And in the 80s, we started to recognize that in addition to sewage, toxic substances were a concern in the Delaware Basin, other waters, fish tissue, things like that. So the folks that are circled there, well, you can guess which one might be Tessie and which one might be the speaker at the moment.
Right, and I have to apologize for the high-waisted pleated pants from the early 80s, but anyway.
And I thought, Tessie, you had, well, you have a prop, but maybe you're gonna use it later. Anyway.
What, you mean my martini?
Yes. The martini. Okay. So moving on. So those were some serious problems. I just wanted to also mention that although I'm not talking much about flow or quantity, the flow and the quantity of water really impacts the quality. So in order to have healthy watersheds, you need to have both. Reasonable quality, not too much. Reasonable quality requires not too much water, not flooding, bring a lot of pollution to the water bodies. And not too little, no droughts. So it's all connected. All the pieces have to fit together. Next slide, please. So what are some of the water uses of the Delaware Basin? And I also say this is a way that we evaluate whether or not the quality is sufficient to support these uses. So the first one, which is most of what I have to say today, relates to aquatic life and living resources. Looking at water quality, and one of the big success stories is dissolved oxygen in the water that's needed for fish to survive and to propagate. Nutrients, often from things like fertilizers and in the past, particularly detergents and things. And living resources. Shad is a big success story in this basin, but also eagles and osprey have rebounded in the basin land and in the states surrounding the basin. They have come back quite significantly. Fish consumption, that's a use. In other words, we eat the fish we collect from the basin. One of the concerns there is toxic contaminants such as PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, and often best known in transformer fluids. And although we don't make them anymore, we are still finding them in fish tissue. So that is something I'll mention. And then the other uses, recreation, so important. And we all, benefit from kayaking and canoeing and tubing down the river, or fishing or boating. And in certain parts of the basin, fishing and boating are the uses that are allowed or safe to do because of the quality of the water, such as near Philadelphia, and others, the contact recreation, swimming, is healthy to do. And water supply, we've already mentioned how vitally important the basin is to drinking water sources. And it's also been, over all its history, important to commerce, whether it's mills or industry. And Tessie and I visited many of those industrial discharges, whether they were pharmaceuticals, a number of paper mills, but they're gone. Refineries, some of them are gone in terms of the dischargers. But the water is still used for some industries and cooling waters and things like that, and also for agriculture, supporting crops, irrigation, and animals. So those are the variety of uses, and then I'll just touch on a couple of successes. Next slide, please. One of the most storied successes is in aquatic life, the dissolved oxygen. From before 1970 to after 2010, as you see in the graph, this is at Philadelphia, at the Ben Franklin Bridge. This is one location and an important one. The water quality went from oxygen that cannot really support aquatic life all the way up to an area where now it is very, very successfully supporting migratory fish such as shad. They come from the ocean back upstream to spawn, and now they're able to do so. So it's a huge success story. And DRBC had a lot to do with it, along with many, many partners and general public, through developing its standards and its load allocations. And we all contributed through funding through the Clean Water Act to secondary or biological treatment that improved the dissolved oxygen of sewage treatment plants. Today, the water quality near Philadelphia protects fish migration, not yet propagation. So DRBC is working on that, and others as well. Next slide, please. So here's the graph related to the shad. The populations in the Delaware River have rebounded from historical lows, like look in the 40s and 50s. The shad per haul was close to zero, and then went significantly up over time. And it's bouncing around. But today, the river supports a fishable American shad population. So it's another really notable success. Next, please. PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, again, a toxic substance, no longer made. The concern is that they are probable human cancer causers. The primary exposure for humans is through fish when you eat the fish, and the levels in the estuary are too high. There are a number of dischargers that are performing plans to get them down, and if you look on the graph, you see that over time, from 2005 to 2016, some of the biggest dischargers have made drastic reductions in the PCBs they discharge. As a result, some of the state fish advisors in certain portions of the river basin have improved, allowing safe consumption of more fish from the Delaware. Next. Nutrients, again, a lot of this is from fertilizer use. Today, the non-tidal portion of the river, there's very good in improving nutrient status and trends. In the estuary, there are higher concentrations, and that's something that DRBC and others again are working very hard. The problem with having too much nutrient in the water is this enrichment leads to excessive growth of plants, and algae can contribute to harmful algal blooms and other things like that, but also contributes to lowering the dissolved oxygen. Next slide, please. So challenges, there's a lot of challenges that still remain. Something that's not on this slide is water infrastructure. That's really important in this area. But other really important item is climate change, resulting in severe storms, flooding. A picture on the right is from Trenton. Sea level rise, which has gone up, I believe it's a foot in the last 100 years. One of the concerns, there's many with that, but is that the salt front, they call it, where the salinity is over a certain level, it can go further and further up the river with sea level rise and potentially threaten drinking water intakes. There's also concerns about emerging contaminants. Some of you may have heard of perfluorinated alkyl substances, or PFAS, things that were used in nonstick pans and clothing, making it waterproof clothing or stain resistant items. Those have been found in some fish in the basin, and there's a lot of studying going on in that regard. And lastly, we just have a picture of a harmful algal bloom, something that has been attracting more attention and interest now there have not, to my knowledge, been significant harmful algal blooms in the main stem, because usually they occur in more stagnant water or lakes or slow moving tribs, but there have been in tribs to the Delaware. And it can be a concern for drinking water as well as recreation. And that's a harmful algal bloom picture on the right. The green is not what it should be. Next slide, please. So things you can do for the river. You can do what Linda does and work with Linda, because one of the most important things is to conserve land and habitat. But in your own home, you can conserve energy, you can conserve water, you can reduce your use of road salts or salts. Obviously, don't dump down storm drains, it ends up in the river. Pick up your pet waste, do smart gardening practices, get involved in voluntary cleanups or volunteer monitoring programs. There's a lot of them, and you can contact DRBC or NJDEP to find out opportunities there. And you can celebrate the river's recovery. That is my friend Elena Baldwin Brown, who assisted with some of the slides. And we are celebrating, obviously, on the river at New Hope. So that's something we should all do as well. Felt that was appropriate picture since this is a happy hour. Next slide, please. And where can we get additional information? DRBC has so much really good information on their website. Two that I highlighted is State of the Basin Report from 2019, and it has indicators of status and trends of living resources, water quality, and their basic information. It's I think really good. The Clean Water Act also requires states and DRBC to do integrated water quality reports every 2 years. The bane of some people's existence that work in those organizations, but it is really helpful. And DRBC has one for the Delaware main stem, and that's on the slide. And NJDEP has a phenomenal new 2018 and 20. I believe it may still be technically draft, but it's great as it is on the website. That is very user-friendly and interactive. And you can, like, for instance, go to any Delaware trib. They have a section just for the Delaware Basin. And you can go to any trib in New Jersey, let's say, and find out basic water quality information. And what do we do all this for? Obviously, to protect humans and the human uses, as well as the aquatic life uses of the river and its tributaries for us and our grandchildren. And that's my little one, Thomas, up in Frenchtown. So that is all I have. And thank you very much.
Leslie, that was perfect. I hate to tell you, but you know, you're just getting better with age. I don't know. It was perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now it's time to meet our artists, starting with Joan Capaldo. Joan will be discussing her award-winning painting, No Water, No Life. So you can go to the next slide, and Joan, unmute yourself, please.
I think can you hear me, Tess?
I can hear you.
Hold on a
Sit
second.
down and muted.
Yeah, no, not.
Hey, Jackie,
I
look
lost
at
the
your
screen for a second because a phone rang. Hold on.
Jackie, Judy's daughter is Jackie. She's an art teacher and helper. So all we need to do is move that slide, one slide. I think any minute now.
Sorry, guys, the phone rang and then it lost the thing. So now I'm trying to get it back.
Yeah, we hate this. Everybody hates it.
So how do I get it back?
Oh,
I'm
we
gonna
have
I'm gonna
to-
mute and try it. Sorry, I'm sorry.
We have to read.
Start singing, Tess.
What's that?
Start singing.
No, thanks. No. Let's see. So let's see. Thomas is little over 1 year old now, and pretty darn cute. He looks a lot like his father did at that age, with the blonde hair.
Hey, Tess, I can
Yeah.
add something while you're sitting here waiting for the slide to turn.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
so, and these things always happen, so don't feel bad about it. So the, I think we're almost there. The work that we do along the river is so important. And one of the things that we started this year for the first time is a program where we're taking people out in kayaks. So we're taking groups out. We're working with the Latin American Legal Defense and Education Fund through their Futuro high school program. And we're working with other groups. And just this spring, we had a series of webinars about the Delaware River. And the people who attended 3 or 4 of those 4 webinars are getting a free kayak trip. So I put that out there to say that we should work together, and those artists that would be